My fin fillets have dried, and so we're ready to prime and paint this. Now, depending on your painting circumstances, normally we would attach the upper body tube to the lower body tube at this point, but it's winter, and so I'm having to paint indoors in a fume hood, and it's really hard to paint this full-sized rocket in that hood, so I'm going to paint mine in two sections. In the instructions, their suggested paint scheme is a yellow body with an orange nose cone, orange fins for the forward fins, and red fins for the aft fins. Alright, and that's a perfectly fine scheme. I'm going to do mine a little bit differently. I'm going to make one set of fins orange, the opposite set of fins red, and then the other two yellow to match the body tube. Okay, I'm going to be doing most of that off camera though, and we'll come back when all the painting's done to actually do the final assembly. Here I have the rocket in an intermediate stage of painting. Now, as I mentioned before, the yellow here will be the main color of the rocket, and this is the upper body tube. It's already been painted. All right, our nose cone is orange. This is also finished. And then I'm going to use that same color for the opposite fin here. All right, the other fin has been painted red, and I now need to mask that off, paint that fin orange, and then mask that off, and then paint the rest of this all yellow. Here's the painted main body tube section for the rocket, and it came out okay. There are a couple of problems with it here. We did have a little bit of leakage over the masking tape right here. I don't know how those red spots got in there. They did. And then if you look at the red one, I don't know if you can quite, yeah, you can see that. It's got kind of a matte appearance to it, and that's where I probably masked it a bit too early. I think it only had about 18 hours of drying time rather than 24. For now, I'm not going to worry about it. A little clear coat will clear that up. Again, a little bit of leakage there. And so if you want a perfect spray paint job here, you can go back and remask it and repaint it. I'm going to call it good enough. On a 10-foot launch pad distance, this is going to look fine. So our last step here is to take our upper body tube and mate it to the lower body tube. And I say last step, we still have decals and stuff to do, but structurally this will finish the rocket. Okay. Now remember, I added a Kevlar shock cord here. If you just did the standard build, this will be a rubber shock cord, and we'll attach the rubber one here in just a moment. First, I'm just going to dry fit this. Okay, now this is a drawback of having this done in two separate spots. Okay, is that there's going to be a visible seam there, and there's actually a little bit of difference in the painting there. Like there's some paint that didn't quite get covered. And I can fix that by giving this a coat of yellow paint again, kind of from this area onward. You may want to mask off the fins just to prevent any overspray. So what we need now is some wood glue. And I'm just going to put a pretty generous ring here inside the aft body tube. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and smear that around there. I want glue all the way up to the edge so that we get as much glue in there as possible. Alright, on the upper body tube there's nothing that we have to match or avoid, so we can just put this in and turn it back and forth a little bit. Alright, and I'm going to hold this for about 30 seconds while that glue grabs. And then we'll come back here and do the final assembly. Now for the shock cord on my Kevlar end here, I'm just going to tie a loop into it. Now again, if you just use the stock rubber cord, you don't need to do any of this. Alright, so there's a loop, and I'm going to take just a little dot of super glue here to lock that knot into position. Alright, and then we'll take our rubber shock cord here. I'm going to pass it through the loop, and then tie a double knot or 2 half hitches into that. And I'm going to leave a fairly long piece here on the free end so that it's not going to pull itself loose. Alright. Now I am going to go and give a top coat of yellow on this so that we've got the right paint base to do the decals. But when you're ready to put this all together, alright, you would tie on the nose cone here. Alright, do a double knot in it as well. I'm not going to do it at this moment. And then the parachute will tie on here as well. Here's our parachute, and this is mostly pre-assembled here. Okay, now this is a snap swivel, and if you've seen my other videos, you know that I like to use these for attaching parachutes, but this does not come with the kit. So if you just want to go with what the kit has, first of all, find all of your shroud line loops here, get them untangled, and then you're going to loop them on one finger, and then on the other end, grab the parachute in the center. Okay, and if you've got everything aligned, all these corners should be at the same level there, or similar to it. If they're not, you can change where you're gripping here on the parachute, or change the relative shroud line length by moving them one way or another. Alright, so that's pretty good there. So if you're going to permanently attach this like the instructions show, take the loops of your shroud lines, pass those through the eyelet, right, regain them on the other side there. You're going to need to open them up a bit. Okay, and then you're going to pass the entire parachute through those loops and then pull it down tight. Now I'm not going to do that, so I don't want to pull it tight and have to try and untie a knot. Okay, so I'll pull it back out. I'm going to re-find my center point here and make sure everything's still even. Alright. Now for this, the snap swivels you can get in the fishing departments of sporting goods and hardware and department stores. The size doesn't make a whole lot of difference in terms of the parachute, but the snap part has to be big enough that it can go around the eyelet here and still move freely. Okay, we're going to take the swivel end, the circular end here of the snap swivel, and pass our loops through that. Okay, open the loops up again, and I'm holding on back here so that I don't lose the relative length of each shroud line. I'm going to take the entire swivel and pass it up through the loops. Okay, move the loops down, and then I'm just going to pull those tight and they'll form a knot there. Alright, recheck your parachute, make sure you have the shroud lines the same length yet. If you don't, you can easily untie this at this point and try again. If you've got them where you want them, then take just a little dab of white glue or wood glue and apply that to the knot. Okay, and it's just a little tiny bit. Work that into the shroud lines there. Okay, and then when you're ready to launch, simply clip that in. Alright, and then check here. This is what I was talking about. This should be able to move freely here. If this is too tight, it can get stuck in one direction or another, and that could cause your ejection charge not to fully deploy the parachute and the rest of the recovery system. And so you could have a bad recovery that way. So as long as this can move freely, though, that shouldn't happen. I've touched up the paint on the body tube a bit here, and now we're ready for the decals. So if we look at the box illustration here, we just have 4 decals. We have 3 orange wraps, and those are shown up here at the top, and then the main Cerberus decal here. Okay, and that's just going to go along the body tube. Now, one of the things I really like about wraps like this, and especially on sport rockets where we're not trying to get a particular scale effect here, is you can use them to hide mistakes. Okay, so for example here, since I painted this in 2 sections, I've still got a bit of a seam here. But I could use one of those wraps to cover the seam and make the whole thing look like it was one piece. Also down here by the launch lug, I got a little bit of a crinkle of paint. I'm not sure why, but it just decided to do that. And so I could do a little sanding there and cover that with a wrap as well if I wanted to do that. Okay. Now for vinyl, I like to use this dish soap method. So I've got a basin of water here, and it's just got 1 drop of dish detergent in it. And this allows us to easily change the placement of decals if we don't get them in the right spot. So here I'm just going to take my first wrap. Alright, and what this does is temporarily make it less sticky. Okay, and I do want to hide this seam. So here I can apply this. Let it wrap around. Okay, now if I'm really good, it comes together evenly. It's not quite meeting, which means my paint's thick, basically. Alright, but I can stretch this a little bit. Like, whoop, had it. Okay, till it meets there. And then what you want to do is take a tissue or a rag or paper towel and just squeegee out the water from this. Now yes, if you look closely you can see there's a seam underneath there. But from even a moderate distance, it's going to look a lot better. Okay, now it may take a full 48 hours for these decals to reach their full stickiness again. So if you're planning on doing something like clear coating them, which you really don't need to do, but if you're going to do that, wait at least 48 hours. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and do the main Cerberus decal here. And on mine, I want it to be placed opposite the launch lug. So it's going to be on this face. Alright, and that's going to be roughly in the middle. Now this has got a large transparent area to it, and at first it's going to look really awful. I'm just going to warn you ahead of time. The bubbles and such will go away, so be assured of that. Okay, so just put that on there loosely. Let's see how straight I am. It looks like it's pretty straight. So go ahead and tack that down a bit. Check it again. It still looks pretty good. Alright, so once again, go ahead and take your drying material here. squeegee the water out. Actually, doesn't look as awful as I thought it was going to. Bit of a bubble there. Alright, and during that 48 hours where this is still adhering, if you need to, you can come back and do some more squeegeeing. Sometimes you'll see that little pockets of air or even water develop. You can just squeegee those out as it dries. Alright, so I've got a little bit of edge you can still see there. It's got some air under it. So again, as this dries over a couple of days, you can continue to squeegee that stuff out. Okay, I still have 2 more stripes to put on, but I'll do that off camera, and then we'll come back for the very final assembly. I have all my decals on, and you can see here, especially on the Cerberus, it's kind of turned this milky white. Again, that will go away over time. And now we just need to put everything together. So if you'll recall from very early on in this video series, I added a threaded rod to this. Now you don't have to, that was optional. But now I'm going to go ahead and put on a washer and a nut to this, and this is what will keep the motors in instead of having to use masking tape to friction fit them. Alright, and so that can just hang there. Over on the forward end, we just need to tie in the nose cone. Okay, so we'll take the free end here of our shock cord and tie a double knot or 2 half hitches into that. Alright, give it a pull from all directions. Okay, and then we're going to cut this back to about 6 millimeters or about 1/4 of an inch there, so it can't get caught on the shoulder. And then if you want, you can also add just a little dot of glue to that. Just to help ensure that the knot doesn't come undone. And it doesn't take much, just a little bit there. And we'll just kind of work that into the knot. And then the parachute that we had prepped earlier now can simply snap on to our nose cone. Okay, now I'm not going to fully assemble this because I do have wet glue here. Okay, this is a little bit more of a challenging build for a sport rocket, mainly just due to the long time required to do all the painting and such. But I think it came out rather nicely. And with that, I hope you had a great time building this with me. Have a great flight and a safe recovery, and please stay tuned for more of my videos.